if you're listening, sports fans, especially from Canada, you know this man. He's interviewed the all-time greats in each and every sport, and just about every one of us wanted his job. He's now the host of Bleacher Report's Game Day Show, but we know him from Cabbie on the Street, NBA Court Service, Cabbie Presents, to name a few. The one, and I mean the only, Cabbie Richards. How are you doing, my man?
I'm not bad. Thank you very much for the generous intro. I appreciate that.
Yeah, man. You're in Vegas right now, right? What's the vibe?
Correct. Like? It's eerily quiet on the Strip. I went for a run the other day on Memorial Day, and there weren't very many people walking around. There were a few police cars, and then there was just like a parade of American muscle cars. There were like these cars from like the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s, just really loud engines. Some of them had exposed engines, and they were just, you know, kind of like, the Friday of Caravana where people just walk up and down Yonge Street, or they used to. I don't know if they do it anymore.
Yeah, they still do.
And then like just, dudes in town from like Michigan who had these beautiful cars, they would just come drive up and down Yonge. It was just kind of like that. It was like a parade for Memorial Day, and every third car had an American flag. It was a little bit odd, but that's really been the most activity I've seen in Las Vegas. I live about 25 minutes from the Strip, so it's the community I live in is very much just like a suburb. It's like Etobicoke in Toronto, or Mississauga. Yeah, it's pretty quiet. You know, there's a Costco and a Whole Foods and a Home Depot and all that kind of stuff. But life here is quiet, and I'm in a bubble, which is fine. If I was in Toronto, I'd probably run into a lot more people. I would have been tempted to go to Trinity Bellwoods Park the other day, which I would have been tempted. I wouldn't have done it, but I would have been tempted. So it's actually kind of nice that I'm here in a little bubble.
And like, what's life back at home? Like, you've been catching up on shows. Like, you will check out The Last Dance.
Yeah, well, that's not specific to back home, but yeah, The Last Dance was like a narcotic on my Sunday nights. Okay. I needed it. The link was being shared on social media. I'm like, I don't want any of this ruined for me. I know the story. I lived in the Michael Jordan era, so I know of the main narrative. I didn't know a lot of this. There were like 5 or 6 small things that were presented in the 10-part doc that I didn't know about, like Scottie Pippen's family, for one. But it was wildly entertaining, and it was like a great piece of marketing for both Jordan and Nike and revisionist history. So I needed that on my Sunday nights, those 2 hours, and I'm so happy I got to see it.
Yeah, I mean, we all are. So I'll start there because, you know, that's fresh in everybody's mind. So, you know, I know you are close friends with Michael Jordan. No.
I've only met him twice. I'm not close friends. No. I do not want to be mischaracterized. I've only met him twice, 2 brief encounters, and there's probably a total of 7 minutes that I got to talk to Michael Jordan. So I've seen him once in a restaurant, and my eyes were wide open like a child looking at Santa Claus or, you know, Jesus. Yeah. Shout out to Black Jesus, who they used to call him. We're not friends.
No, I know you're not.
He might recognize my face, but not recognize me. He would be able to say, "Hey, Cab, how you doing?"
You kind of ruined the joke because I know you're not close friends with him, but I was just gonna say, were you surprised that your part was cut out of The Last Dance?
There were a couple of omissions, mine notably, but no, a couple of omissions.
Yours was after his kids.
What's that?
Yours was after his kids.
Yes. Yeah, I'm in parts 11 and 12. I come in for the Washington Wizards years. But yeah, there were a couple of omissions there, like Scoop Jackson, I thought would have been a nice addition, because Scoop Jackson is a writer from Chicago. He's as much Chicago as Michael Wilbon, and Scoop can kind of speak to the greater culture at large and like the effect of the Jordan brand and Jordan. But anyway, it was wildly entertaining, and I'm so happy that I had that. I'm sure many men feel the same way, that they had that on their Sunday nights for, you know, those 5 weeks.
Trust me. But like, no, seriously though, how, like, because you said you interviewed him twice, but what is it like interviewing arguably like the most iconic figure, not just in sports, but, you know, in human history? You know what I mean? Like, what was it like? What was your mindset? Did you have to psych yourself up? Like, what take you through that?
Well, in both scenarios, I wasn't allowed to interview Michael Jordan, so I just took a shot. I just shot my shot. And we were on golf courses, so it was relatively quiet. But Michael moves the air. He bends the energy around him because he has this aura and so many, like millions of people revere him. I am one of them.
Yeah.
So, you know, both times meeting him, I was nervous and I just had to like jump in the moment because the window wasn't even open. It's like I had to like crack it with my microphone, so to speak, and then just push my fat body through this little space in order to get, you know, a few minutes with, you know, this icon, this on the Mount Rushmore, most famous athletes in the history of the human species. So
yeah.
I was nervous, excited, and he was generous with his time. The 2 times that I got to interview him, so I'm extremely grateful for even having those moments with the guy. And I hugged him uncomfortably for probably 27 or 28 seconds long, like combined.
Yeah. Oh man, and that's part of your interview style, but that style is famously unique. I want to know, like, how did you carve out that style? Because there wasn't really anyone doing it like that before. There hasn't been anyone that did it after. I kind of want to know, like, who are your idols like growing up? Like, don't say Bob Costas.
No, well, no, I don't think Bob Costas. Bob Costas is very smooth, but I don't think I took any cues from Bob Costas because I'm about as smooth as a chainsaw in church. But as far as like, as far as influences, I think I was informed a little bit by Ahmad Rashad, who hosted NBA Inside Stuff in the 90s. And then Will Smith and Martin Lawrence and Jim Carrey, I just was ripping off their jokes and I would use them on girls like in my high schools, and I wanted to be a performer much like them. And then probably most directly, there was a guy on BET and his name is Al Shearer, but he went by the name Hits on the Street or Hits from the Street. And he did these little segments where he would go around cities and like HBCUs and he would interview people. His style was different than mine because he would make fun of people a lot, and I chose to make fun of myself because it's a defense mechanism or disarming mechanism that works for me. And then as far as like my actual interview style, because I'm just such a loudmouth and I'm obnoxious and I want to be everybody's friend, I'm very like chummy in the interaction. So I always want the athletes to feel like I always want them to feel like I'm one of their friends that they're speaking to, and also that we're the same. So I would disarm them, but I put my arm around dudes. I would touch them. I would stand very close to them. Like, it would create some awkward moments, but it's also an experience that hopefully they hadn't had before. So I would stand out, good or bad, hopefully more good than bad. But that's kind of like my thought process in developing my interview style or technique.
That's interesting. And I know, like, as an athlete, just thinking about somebody doing that at first, you're a little caught off guard because you never experienced that, right? You never experienced that. But once you see like where you're coming from and you know, the interactions that you're having with us, it kind of calms us down. But honestly, could your style work? Could there be another Cabbie in 2020? Say you were coming up now during COVID, like, could there be a Cabbie right now?
Well, not during a pandemic, no, not without a vaccine.
But even after, so maybe there'd be restrictions and all that. So
right, yeah. You know what? That would be our new normal until the vaccine is widespread, we will be existing in this particular normal. But once the vaccine is widespread and there's more available testing, then it might return, hopefully it'll return to 100% of our old normal. Yeah. But that will likely change. And as far as like up close and personal interactions, that's a tricky question. I don't know. Like, you got to respect people's boundaries in space a lot more now than when I started. I started in 2001. And I met Michael Jordan in 2009, and I started hugging Kobe in 2005, and like Morris Peterson, and like, let's see, I'm trying to think of baseball. Like, I started putting my face against like Vernon Wells' face and David Ortiz in like 2007, 2008. And in football, didn't really mess with you guys too much. I'm trying to think of who I interviewed the most in the CFL. It's probably like Mike Riley or
Bo Levi.
Yeah, Bo Levi. Yeah, actually, this is gonna sound so demented. But I like licked water off of his hand once. I mean, this is very. Wait,
what?
Yeah, listen. I'm not proud of that moment. Like, I I asked him if he was a glass half full or half empty kind of guy. So if he said half empty, then I would have drank the glass. Okay. But he said half full. So then he was holding it and I filled the glass, and I overfilled it so the water was flowing over the edge of the glass onto his hand. I took the glass and then I'm just a strange dude.
I don't know if I seen that, but I did see you interviewing him, but did that make the final edit?
Yeah, it did. Embarrassing. So that was at the Grey Cup when Toronto beat Calgary in 2017 in Ottawa, and it was like snowing, and I believe it went to overtime.
Yes.
It was a great game.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's.
So I want to get into this, so most, as you know, most athletes want to be rappers or entertainers, and entertainers want to be rappers, and rappers want to be athletes, right? So what was your goal when you were young? Were you even into sports, or what was your kind of mindset to reach towards?
I was never good. I'm pretty average at everything. So I didn't excel that much in high school sports. So, but I always knew I wanted to perform. I wanted to entertain, and I wanted to be, a version of Will Smith and Denzel Washington. Those two men are my personal heroes. So when I went to Ryerson to study radio and TV, I thought, okay, let me learn about radio and television as a backdoor to get into film, because I wanted to be an actor. But then I started interning at the Score in my second year. I was like, I should probably get an internship in TV since I'm learning about television. Right. So I got lucky, got this internship at this small TV station along with Tim McAuliffe, Sid Sixero, Adnan Virk.
Yes, legend.
Who else was at the time? James Sabalski was there, Elliot Friedman, Greg Sansoni, Mark Hebscher. There's the Score, and Martine Guyard, Lisa Bowes. The Score had a lot of talent in that building, and everybody kind of had this underdog mentality, which served us well. So that's kind of how I got into it. And as far as merging, I carved out a lane. I always wanted to do sports and pop culture, because both are always relevant. Both are of the time right now. And I just thought that was my creative way to learn about the person, the athlete, as a human, not just as someone who scores 25 points per game or is averaging 2 assists per game or 100 yards rushing. Early in my days, I was asking about food and their phones. I mean, actually maybe not phones. Phones, I probably started asking about in 2005 or 6. Whenever on those Blackberries or those Palm Trios where you can start getting photos. Yeah. That's why 05, 06, that's when I started asking about, hey, let me see your phone. And of course, nobody would ever see me. Actually, Lamar Odom showed me his phone once. My dude.
What was it?
It was just Lamar Odom was just scrolling for what seemed like hours. And none of the phone numbers had names attached. Right. And then he was just, let me check. And there was just dozens of different phone numbers and dozens of different women just showing their assets. And I was like, this is incredible. What it must be like to be a famous Los Angeles Laker, 6'11" dude, charming, handsome. And it was, so anyway, sports and pop culture. I'd ask about music in the interviews. I love asking musicians or entertainers about sports because they're so related. They have shared experiences. Obviously in music, you're way more vulnerable. Actually, I can't even say you're way more vulnerable. I think you're openly vulnerable about your feelings and your experiences. Yes. But then athletes, their emotions are so raw in the heat of competition. Yes. So you could see rage, or you could see tears of joy, or tears of vanquish, tears of defeat. So that was all. So I guess in a way there are parallels, but just artists are much more. There are much more safe spaces in music to be vulnerable and to be revealing than in sports. Because it's changing, but for many decades it was you have to wear a figurative armor on your body and not let anybody come in. As you know, obviously I'm speaking to an athlete, and you got to be tough, both mentally and physically. So. I'm sorry, that was such a long answer.
No, I
such
love
a simple
it. I
question.
loved it. I had a whole bunch of questions written down, but you literally are taking them off as we're going, so it's perfect. So like, you know, Odell Beckham has that one-handed catch, and that was the moment that springboarded him into the national spotlight.
Yes.
I wanna know, what was Cabbie's one-handed catch? What was Cabbie's moment?
Oh, wow. Thank you for asking. That's a great question. It would probably be, so in Canada, I drank out of the Stanley Cup in 2008. And as you know, hockey is the football of Canada.
Yes.
And the Stanley Cup is the holy grail of sports in our country. So I did that in 2008 with the help of a goaltender named Chris Osgood, who was the Detroit Red Wings goaltender. I went in there with a yellow poncho, swimming goggles. I had a snorkel. And, you know, at that time, you were allowed to go into the dressing room and interview players in their celebration. Yeah. And they went in Pittsburgh. It was tiny. There were 2 dressing rooms. They were the size of classrooms, small classrooms at that. And, you know, Nicholas Lidstrom was the captain, poured champagne in my mouth. Dominic Hasek poured champagne over my eyes. But I was wearing the goggles, so they didn't burn. It wasn't until Norm Powell on the Raptors championship parade in June of 2019 that I actually got champagne burning in my eyes, bro. It burns. You probably celebrated a championship, but it burns, my dude.
You know what?
Normie poured a whole bottle over my, and as I was interviewing him, and I'm like, Normie, I don't deserve this. What did I do to deserve this? Okay, but there you go. Okay, so
got you back with all the athletes that wanted to do that to you.
Yeah, you know what? You're probably right. You're probably right. And then I'm trying to think. Maybe it was the Kobe interview where we either the one I gave him pajamas or the one where we took a limo ride.
Yes, I remember the limo ride.
And I wanted to go. I like, yo, Kobe, let's go to your house. He's like, you're not coming to my house. And every year we ask, like, can we do the interview at his house? And Vanessa was like, nope. They say happy wife, happy life.
Yeah,
Vanessa's like, nope. Like, they did not allow cameras into their home until one, like, Christmas Day special in, like, 2010 or something. It's like that, or 12. That was the only time they let cameras in their home. Yeah. So some chubby, weird reporter from Canada was not going to get access to Kobe's house, although I tried. I never got access to it. So I think it was one of the moments with Kobe, and then just seeing a reporter interact with the Stanley Cup, and certainly someone that looked like me, you know, fat. I was wearing, you know, I wear T-shirts and baseball caps, and I didn't ask questions that would elicit the following responses. We gave it 110%. We got to get the pucks in deep. We got to play our game. All those kind of cliched responses. So I was very fortunate that the guys who allowed their guards to come down, much like Kobe, then the audience, I think, got to experience the players in a different way.
Dude, that's because, like I've told you, you're my inspiration, because when I would watch those interviews when I was a kid, I'm like, this is the stuff I want to know. This is what I would ask if I was in that situation. So for the fact that you were able to do it for the first time ever and give us those images and into guys' lives, I was like so thankful for that as a kid. That's why pretty much I started this podcast, so I can just ask my friends these questions
as you should. I'm sure. Yeah. And I'm sure, like, the best example of that right now, athletes having a podcast, is All the Smoke with Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson. It is amazing. Yes. And because they're speaking to their brethren, and there's obviously the shared experience of being professional athletes. There's just a comfort. Yes. And I'm sure you're going to be able to do this on the All Ball podcast, because they're going to trust you. Yeah. You're not going to go way off the rails. But if guys want to talk speak from their heart and share experiences, then I'm sure you just sit back from the microphone and let them speak, because it's a safe space and you guys have all been through the same kinds of things.
100%. But you were talking about Kobe earlier. Man, he's so fascinating, because whether you loved him or hated him, he was polarizing no matter what, right? So you have a kid from Canada that's going out to see the king of LA. I want to know, what was it about that chemistry that worked so well? Because it makes no sense on paper, But then when you see an actual film in actuality, it's like a match made in heaven.
Dean, okay, so I interviewed him about 20 times, and he knew early on that I wasn't there with an agenda. So I think that was like the first big thing, because a lot of people in the media have agendas, and they want. Before there was something called clickbait.
Yeah.
There were still like reporters and that were going in with a certain point of view or a certain slant in their questions to get the salacious quote, which could be on the the headline of the newspaper, or the headline in the sports section. So Kobe was very guarded. But I went in there asking him, like the very first time I interviewed him, I asked him about bandwagon fans in LA and could he actually draw a physical bandwagon. Right. He didn't draw a bandwagon. I got Phil Jackson to draw a bandwagon. I need to find that notebook, actually. I wish Kobe did draw in it, but he didn't. And then I asked him about posters in his room. And then I asked him about CDs. And then when I went to LA for the first time, I brought some CDs. I brought pillows and a toiletry bag. And then the next time it was the pajamas, and I cut him a key to come to my house. And then the next time, I brought him like a snow globe, and I kept bringing him props for us to interact with. One time I put my head on his shoulder, and he said he's gonna, and I was like, oh, can I do the retina scan? He goes, I'll retina scan you with my index knuckle. So it was very much like a big brother, little brother relationship that he knew for 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It was all about having fun, and he could be playful, and I certainly was going to be playful because I wasn't there really to ask any kind of serious questions. Yeah. Every once in a while there would be a basketball question mixed in there, but I really want to know about Kobe. What's that?
Yeah, I remember the one about who's on top of you or LeBron. And
thank you. Yeah, thank you. He said he's about chasing rings, and at the time he had 5 and LeBron had 1. So
it was perfect time to bring that up.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, thank you, man. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, staying on basketball, obviously, the Vince Carter story in Toronto was a perfect storm because you had a young organization, young all-star player who was, caught the eye of the entire league. And then you have your career too, who's kind of taking off in a similar time period. How cool is it to witness his career, see Vince Sanity in real time, and then also see the aftershocks, with all these young Canadian players, not just players, but like all-stars. Like, how cool is it to see both?
Right. We had, I guess in baseball, we had a superstar in Roberto Alomar in the early 90s. We didn't have an NFL team, unfortunately. We just still don't in Toronto. And in hockey, there were superstars that played for the Maple Leafs, like Doug Gilmour and Wendell Clark, etc. But we didn't have a superstar in basketball. Vince Carter was our first superstar. And because Toronto has this inferiority complex, this little brother complex in relation to the United States because of the economic power of the U.S., the population size, the effects on the culture, all those things that we absorb, having a guy for us was like, and maybe that's why we embraced him so hard. And maybe that's why the breakup felt so deep. Yeah. Tracy left earlier. Tracy left after the 2000 season, but Tracy wasn't the guy. Yeah. I mean, he became the guy, became one of the guys in the NBA, leading the league in scoring 3 out of 4 years. But Vince was like our guy, like put us on the map in that slam dunk contest. Yeah. So I actually learned a very important lesson from Vince Carter. The lesson I learned was don't mistake your relationship on camera with a relationship in the real world. There was a time, and it took me a while I felt it in the moment, but it was an important lesson to learn because I'm so chummy in my interviews. I think everybody's just like fun, and it is very fun, but then I mistakenly took that like outside of the interview space, and he had a nightclub. It was called Inside, and I was treated very well there. I'd go there with my friends. We'd banging on the walls, drinking, having a great time. And there were a couple of times where I would approach Vince or try to talk to him, and he would just blow me off. And I was like, oh, we're not friends in real life. On camera, it's cool. But that was very important for me to learn early on, because then I knew not to make that mistake later. I definitely made some mistakes later as far as relationships go, because sometimes I was a little too aggressive. I was messaging too much, and I wasn't like checking in as like a human, or, hey, yo, that hat trick you scored the other night was filthy, or, yo, 4 touchdowns in one game, or whatever it is. I was like chasing content, and it was like I was asking for favors to do interviews, and I should have been like, yo, bro, Ozarks, crazy. Like, have you watched Ozarks, or have you listened to the new Toronto 3 by Tory Lanez's last album? You know, so
Kenny Lattimore.
Kenny Lattimore. Jeez, what are we in 1994 right now?
Michael Jordan dropped that in the dog.
Yes, you're right. You're right. Yes.
Like, what is
Kenny
this?
Lattimore. Yeah. Well, that was the time. That was, that time it was Brian McKnight, Kenny Lattimore. I mean, they probably cut out any reference to R. Kelly. Yeah. And R. Kelly used to play basketball with Michael Jordan in Chicago in that time, but smartly, like, let's keep that completely away from the doc. So that's how the Kenny Lattimore. That's so funny.
No, but so going back to Vince, like, was it something he said, or was it the action that kind of?
Oh, it was the action. It wasn't like get away from me. It was the action. Okay. It was just like, and another mistake was one time I approached him while he was talking to a girl, and like when you're talking to women as single dudes, in a night spot, like your focus is on one thing. It's like, this is a new friend, and I want to meet this new friend. I want to
get to know.
I want to get to know her. So, as a 24-year-old, I was like, yeah, but it's me. Hey, and then what am I doing? Because I wouldn't want that to happen to me. But there's a lesson that I needed to learn, so I learned it.
That's awesome. So, like, how far could the Cabbie name drop go back in the day? Like, are you getting in the front line of all the clubs, or were you?
No. Listen.
About asking, like, what's the full Cabbie off-field experience back then?
I don't even know if I would get the staff discount at a Foot Locker. You know what I mean? Like that. There is no juice with my name. I think. When it came to some night spots, like some people would recognize my face, but I wasn't famous. Like I spoke to famous people, and maybe I was some kind of proxy to a famous person, but I certainly was not famous. So I wasn't getting any kind of like a preferential treatment when it came to night spots. It's not like I would go to a restaurant and they'd be like, "Hey, your French fries are on us." Like it wasn't even.
You missed man. If you came out now with the way social media is, like, you probably would be like, one of those dudes, social media famous dudes, because that stuff is changed the game now. It's unbelievable.
Thank you, man.
Yeah. So I want to know, like, if we're getting closer, and I got to know, like, your favorite athlete turned into media member, because you got guys like Mike Vick, Tony Romo, Jalen Rose, Barkley.
Right, that's a great question.
Weber. Who else am I missing? John Madden, like, the list goes on. So who's the kind of like your Mount Rushmore, or do you even think about those guys? Because you work with Ocho now, right?
Yes, I do. Yeah, and he's wonderful. Chad Johnson is wonderful, and as famous as he was, he's so low maintenance, and it's like so refreshing. That is a great question. I've never been asked it before, and I've never actually thought about it. For honesty and authenticity, it's Charles Barkley. For analyzing the game, it's probably a toss-up between Chris Collinsworth, and I actually really liked Chris Webber. I knew there's some shade that gets thrown at Chris. I think I really like how he calls basketball games. And then as far as like an interviewer or like a personality, Jalen Rose is on the Mount Rushmore. He has an incredible knowledge of pop culture, and then just a great point of view from the athletes as being on the mountaintop in collegiate sports, or close to it. I mean, they didn't beat Duke, but for 2 years they went to the Final Four, and then having a pretty good NBA career and going to the finals in 2000 with the Indiana Pacers and losing to the Lakers. But just, he knows so many people, and he's just so relatable, and he's great at articulating complex issues, and he's entertaining.
Yeah.
Those are great ones. Hold on, I should add someone else in the mix. I love what Steve Nash is doing right now. I think it's with us, with Bleacher Report, talking to young point guards.
Yeah.
It's fascinating, like Trae Young or John Morant, there's a language that they both share, a commonality, but I've never played collegiate basketball, or obviously not in the professional pros. So I don't know a lot of that language. So I'm watching it, I'm learning.
Yeah.
But like the comfort level when you speak to other athletes, the audience is just going to get a perspective that they can't get from someone like me, who is in the media and doesn't have the athletic background. Yeah. So it's harder for us to get some of the honesty that you'll be able to get on your podcast because of the shared experience and the trust. So I'm a little bit jealous of what you're going to be able to, like, of some of the interviews you're going to get and some of the stories and moments that you're going to be able to recall because you have that shared experience.
Yeah, that's, like you said, that's been the cool thing about this, because a bunch of people have hit me up and they've been like, yo, I love like the interactions you're having, because it just sounds like you're in the locker room, or it sounds like, you know, I'm jumped in on a FaceTime call between you guys. So that's been the coolest part, just giving people that, you know, that inside access to stuff, because you're right, like we do have similar experiences, and what I'm going to talk to another athlete about is completely different than the media, like a medium.
Yes, so, of course.
No, but no, we've been talking about your style for sure. Was there any backlash, like when you were coming out from, you know, traditionalists that were like,
yeah, you know what? It was harder to be accepted in the hockey media than any other sports media, because it's an old boys club. And I was often the only face that looked like mine in a dressing room of 50 people, 25 players, 25 media members. And again, I looked different. I wore sneakers, I wore t-shirts, baseball caps, and I spoke in a language that these guys also spoke, whether it's a Jay-Z or a Kanye reference, or whether it's referencing a new pair of Jordans, or some movie like The Matrix or something like that. Like many times in my interviews at The Score, which I couldn't do now, is we reference girls, just being a young man in society.
The innuendos.
The innuendos, which you cannot be. So that is like, I definitely got away with some ish back then. But then like the other media members were twice my age. They wore those ugly New Balance or those Nike Monarchs, those dad shoes and mom jeans. And, you know, they're part of the old guard. But even like the hockey establishment was not there to embrace me. I got my producer, Dave Cricks, and shout out to him, he had to like fight a lot of battles while I was interviewing, and he had to intercept people that were coming to either stop the interview or question why I was asking certain questions. So it wasn't the smoothest ride, but I took a cue from Brian Burke, who at one point was the president and GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And he said, don't tell me about the labor pains, just show me the baby. So I know that nobody cared about the process. They just wanted to see the clips. Yeah. It's like, do you care how many specific pieces go into your iPhone and how many on the supply chain? There's 65 different countries contribute to your iPhone. No, when the new iPhone drops, you just want the new iPhone. Yeah. Like you don't care about the iPhone's
just journey. Show me that.
So yeah. So I never bemoaned or complained about how hard it was to get stuff. I just knew that people only cared about the final product. So whether I only got 2 minutes with somebody or I got 7 minutes with somebody, I had to shoot my shot, or I had to like make that little moment happen that I can get in, get out, and then immediately go edit. And then hopefully people will see something in my interviews that they don't see very often.
Right. You spoke to something about the hockey culture and the hockey locker room that, you know, there wasn't a lot of people with, you know, your face in there. And a few people have come out right now and talked about, you know, the systematic racism that's been going on in hockey. What were your kind of thoughts when you saw those stories coming out?
Well, Akeem Aliu's story in the Players Tribune was powerful. And I mean, it's a first-person account of his experience living in, I believe his father's Nigerian and his mother is like Croatian. She's from Europe, and I can't remember, but like living in Europe as, you know, as a mixed race couple in the 80s and 90s. And then it was just more disappointing his experience in Canada, like in the OHL and then in the AHL. And then he had a brief stint with the Calgary Flames. And it's more disappointing when people don't believe his experience. They're like, oh, you're clout chasing, or racism is not that bad, or you weren't good enough. but people they don't see the world from another person's lens. And all he's saying is, this is my lens, this is my experience.
Right.
And why wouldn't you believe someone's firsthand experience? So there's that. Obviously, I'm like other players in hockey I'm friends with, and I know like Joel Ward scores a goal with the Washington Capitals in 2012 or 13 against the Bruins in Game 7. Twitter is littered with the N-word.
Yeah.
Wayne Simmons playing a preseason game in London, Ontario, a banana is thrown on the ice in 2016 or 17. You know, you could probably keyword the N-word and any black player's name, and then you'll see tweets. And it's gross. So, you know, hockey culture has a way to go. I mean, it's not all like that, but there are certain attitudes that die hard. Mm-hmm. And if more people, if some of the, and Evander Kane gave voice to this on First Take today. He said if some of the white stars in respective sports let their voice to the struggle and speaking out about racism, then maybe more people will hear it. Yeah. Because, man, we've been speaking about it for a long time. We have hashtags. We've had songs. We have performances at award shows. We have silent protests. We have marches in the streets, rallies, and a lot of times the changes that we hope will be made aren't made, and some of the attitudes that we hope change haven't changed. So it's.
I was proud of Carson Wentz today. I don't know if you saw what he said.
I did, on Twitter, yeah.
Huge, man, that was huge, because if more guys like that start speaking out, then, you know, it means more when people like that speaks out, because they don't have to. Their lives is not going to be changed, right?
You're right, and we have allies in the struggle, and Carson's just saying, like, when people that look like Carson Wentz acknowledge that they have a privilege and then there are two Americas, I think that helps the conversation. When people just acknowledge, like, yeah, you know what, you're right. Like, on whatever side of the line you're on, you know, that one side has more privilege than the other. And as Will Smith said, there isn't more racism, or it's just now on video. It's just now being recorded. Ooh, yeah. So people are seeing these documents or documented events, which maybe they didn't believe before. But it's hard to believe the video once you see the video.
Exactly. We won't end off on that note. We got to play a game first. So you can't leave the people just one. I got a game. It's called Gut Check Time, okay?
Let's do it.
2 options, and you have 3 seconds to answer. For example, I'm going to say MJ or LeBron, and you got to pick one within 3 seconds. Ready?
Okay. Gut check time. It's like gut check time while I sit on the hot seat on the All Ball podcast. Let's get it.
All right. You ready? All right. First one. Doug Flutie or Pinball Clemens?
Oh my God. Pinball Clemens as a man.
Right.
In the okay.
Number 2. Vince Carter or Kyle Lowry?
Kyle Lowry.
Okay. The third one. You'll love this one. Rafael Araujo or Andrea Bargnani?
Oh my God! I guess Andrea Bargnani, but you know what? He was ahead of his time. Colangelo was ahead of his time. A big man with range.
Yes.
Before, I mean, he came in the league in 2006. He was not drafted number 1 overall, and Dirk Nowitzki was drafted in 1996 or 98. I think it was 98 with Paul Pierce.
Yeah.
But like.
Man, it was funny. They kept telling him to go inside. He's like, no, I don't want to go out the inside. I want to play here.
That's right. That's right.
All right, next one. Jose Bautista or Carlos Delgado?
Jose Bautista.
All right. And then the final one, the 1992 American Dream Team or the Jamaican bobsled team in Cool Runnings?
Well, I guess I'm going to go with the Dream Team because the Dream Team. I guess I know a little bit more about the Dream Team than I wish the bobsled team had I know their cart it toppled over, the bobsled toppled over. Had they made it to the podium, maybe I would have swayed my vote. But you had the '92 Dream Team.
Oh man, they are, man. That was awesome. Ballers, That was Cabbie Richards. Thank you so much, man. That was a lot of fun. Like I've said, man, you inspired me so much, and you don't even know it. Like, I'd be at practice when I was a kid, man, and I'd see like my teammates or whatever, and I'd pretend to be like you. And that's just kind of impact you had on kids all over the place, man. Hope.
Thank you, my brother.
I'm gonna keep keeping up with you, and salute, man. Thank you so much.
Salute to you too. Thank you. I'm a big fan. Thank you so much, man.
All right, brother. Take care, man. Thank you.
That was excellent. I appreciate you having me, man. Thanks for making the time.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes, my dude. Yes.